I got
you're the critic. That's why you got more notes than me.
Stop insulting me, Mark.
My apologies, sir, and welcome. Welcome, everyone, to the spoiler room. Thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up the chair, and grabbing your favorite drink as we take a look at a 1989 film. It's our last Henriksen experience. Not Henriksen, that was from Species, but no, Henriksen experience, and it is the horror show, a.k.a. House 3. Wow, that still boggles my mind, even just saying it right now. House 3, the horror show. But yes, it is a Henriksen experience episode, and we have with us tonight the one and only Master from wherever. I lost it. Like,
I'm a fibber, Mark. I'm a fibber.
You're a fibber, and if you're from Wisconsin, you know exactly what that means. But he's with us once again, Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you?
That's how I'm doing. You're gonna hear a lot of that tonight, folks, because I can't get that damn laugh out of my head.
That's a good Byron. That's a good Byron James laugh. That was very good. I like that. You could do some voice acting now. See. And she is with us as well. What better person to have with us to talk about a film from 1989 than from the horror retrospective? It is none other than Kara. Hello, Kara. How are you?
Doing okay. A little bit of allergies in the throat, but I'm all right.
Oh, hopefully it's just allergies. And
hey.
so glad you could join us. But yeah, the horror show, a.k.a. House 3, which, like I was telling Ian just before he popped in, it's boggling my mind. This was House 3, because given the first two House films, watching this one now, the tone and the type of film this is, it just like, huh?
Yeah.
Hold on a second, Cara. I think is there TV on or something in the background. I'm picking up a lot.
Yeah, I can try moving. Yeah, there's somebody in the room next door watching TV. I don't know if that sounds any better.
Oh, now it sounds better. Yeah, a lot better.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's okay. Your microphone is just too good.
Seriously, I thought they were like right next to you or something.
Yeah. So tonight I'll do the synopsis.
Wait, but Mark, in that synopsis, are you going to explain how the hell this connects to House?
There's a house. And it's
I think it goes with like the whole when it went overseas, how they rename and renumber movies, so they probably assumed it was part of a different series.
It's different, all right.
Yeah, well, initially it was titled House 3. It was intended to be the sequel, if I remember with the trivia, and Kara can definitely correct me on it, but they chose to try to not associate it with that franchise and make it stand on its own, and that's why they made it the horror show.
It's a horror, all right.
Yeah, MGM. That's what it was. They wanted a fresh start with a potentially new series with a new iconic villain. So the script was modified to reflect the new approach, and it was retitled The Horror Show for the U.S. theatrical release, while foreign markets still did it as House 3. So MGM wanted to take it in a new direction. And the story, I'll try to do the synopsis here. Let me see if well, this film borrows from many other movies. Stop me if you heard this before, but we have Lance Henriksen, who plays a detective who's tracking down a very vicious serial killer, the Meat Cleaver killer, Meat Cleaver Max, played by Byron James. And we catch up with our detective, who has a bit of a flashback as we get to see the events unfold of how he finally caught this crazy killer and the psychological effect it's had on him. Well, at the execution, well, the things are just heating up, literally, to where it takes nearly 10 minutes, apparently, though not on screen, for our killer to die in the electric chair. And he says, I'm coming after you. This is just the start of the hell I'm going to put your life through.
He was talking to us, by the way.
He was talking about Lance Henriksen's Detective Lucas McCarthy. So, the meat cleaver Max, they call him meat cleaver Max. He's Max Genke. And so then after he dies in the electric chair and then out of the electric chair and just caught fire and burned to death, a strange professor with this theory about life after death through electrocution comes up with this theory that he's not actually dead. And they're like, you're crazy. And then while he's in the morgue, he's trying to do some research, and lo and behold, a ghost rises from the corpse of Mr. Max. And we cut back to our detective and his family, who are then terrorized by the ghost of Max. At one point, Detective Lucas McCarthy gets set up by the ghost of Max for the death of his daughter's boyfriend, which is the most wafer thin case I've ever seen. He deals with an asshole AI guy who immediately wants our guy in the electric chair. And yeah, it deals with a confrontation with said ghost at the end as he plays off of a theory to try to bring the ghost into the real world to kill Meat Cleaver Max again in the real world. And we see how it unfolds and how it affects his family. And wow. Just wow. Which I'm going to say right now, and we're going to jump around here a bit.
You're not going to defend this movie, are you, Mark?
I will say the House 3 part comes in at the end in the final act when we get our man Lance Henriksen, our Lucas McCarthy, and he actually goes into a different world where the dead Byron lives, and he's in this kind of almost Nightmare on Elm Street type-esque dream world, which is consistent with the other two. But it's not really evident that this is what's really going on. And if you haven't seen the other two house films, you wouldn't know, or you might not even care that this is where the link is. But that's about the only similarity.
Yeah, I honestly thought that I had missed something towards the end, because at one point they're in the house and then they're like in a boiler room, then a power plant, and then they're back in the house. I realized by the time I got back out of the house that there was like a dimensional jump or something, but I was seriously was like, wait, did I miss a driving scene or something like that? I only looked away from the screen for a second and I'm like, where the hell am I?
Yeah, it's not too evident. And Cara, we got a little bit of background noise yet from you, just to let you know. But I was wondering your feeling. Do you see that that's the only real connection with this movie to the other two house films, is this ending where we kind of move into the death world or whatever it's called?
I'd say that's the shoestring of it. There really doesn't seem to be too much that would reference or tie it back to the original.
Right.
It's just it's probably about as, this film is probably good enough to where you can double feature it with, I think, Critters 3, the one with Angela Bassett in it, and they'd pair well.
Oh, good old Critters 3 with Leonardo DiCaprio. Oh yeah.
I don't think I've seen that one.
What, Critters 3?
Yeah, I think I stopped after 2.
Oh man, there's 4, you know.
What, Angela Bassett and Leo DiCaprio are in a Critters movie together?
In outer space.
Oh, that's 4. Yeah, 4 was outer space. 3 was...
Okay, then I'm thinking the 4th one then.
Yep, you're thinking Angela Bassett was in the 4th one, Critters 4. Critters 3 was the apartment complex with Leonardo DiCaprio, a young Leonardo DiCaprio, around his Gilbert Grape years.
Has anyone done like a cartoon of who's eating Gilbert Grape with a critter like gnawing on his arm?
No, but now we should. You're an artist. There you go. You probably make some bank on that.
He'll just be going, I could go at any time. Anyway.
I could fit on that door. Anyway, just move over a little. This water is cold.
The door the merrier. Sorry.
Door the merrier. But back to this film. So, I mean, the film opens with a flashback because he stares at a furnace because the furnace door opens, our McCarthy. This is before the haunting, which makes you think the house is still haunted already. And we get the flashback, and that's probably the most horrific thing in this film is the scene where he decapitates the young woman. But Kara, what'd you think about this opening of this film? It's just awkward, I think.
I mean, especially once we get into like the dream sequence stuff, I thought that was pretty well played. Like they keep throwing twists at you. You don't really know what to expect. So some are like a little bit obvious, but I don't know. I kind of like the way the movie teases with your head.
Mm-hmm. At least in the first beginning part, it definitely teases. That I think it slows a little bit in the middle, but
yeah. And then after that, they just couldn't give the milk away.
Nice. I like that. Ian, what'd you think about the start of this film? Does it start off strong?
No.
Oh, this is gonna be a fun conversation.
No, it's just it's such a puzzlement because I didn't know. Like, okay, first of all, it's produced by Sean Cunningham of Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Scored by Harry Manfredini, also Friday the 13th.
Yes.
It was directed by James Isaac. I don't know, but Alan Smithy is quoted as being one of the co-screenwriters of this.
Yes,
that's never a good sign.
Yeah, because one of the, I forgot which writer it is. I think it was the Alan Warren. Did not want their name associated with.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. But no, I mean, that's the thing is like, if you take a shot every time someone goes down to the basement in this movie, I mean,
you'll have alcohol poisoning.
There are literally like 12 scenes where someone goes down to the basement. I might even be being generous here. It's so cheap looking. It's mostly one location. You could say there's actually two houses, but whoop-de-doo. It's all just so dark. My biggest problem with this is that I never figured out the rules of Mr. Janky, or as I like to call him, Mr. Janky, because that's what this whole production was. Okay, we find out later that he had an electric chair in his home, and he would practice dosing himself with electricity to build up a tolerance so that when he went to the electric chair, he would be able to withstand the electrocution. And then the scientist guy who wants to study evil and electricity, he discovers that Max isn't really dead. And yet we see this electric spirit apparition come out of, from under the sheet or whatever. And then also all these characters, the detective's family, start having hallucinations and seeing things. What are this guy's powers? And are they, at the end, it seems clear that the detective needs to kill Max, but I'm pretty sure he's already dead because he's flying around outside his body and affecting all this stuff. I understand Freddy Krueger. All right. I don't understand Max Janky. Can anyone help me out here?
Kara, can you help? I got nothing. There's no rule set.
He's horror film vomit. It's a mix of everything.
It does. This film borrows from so many things, not just Nightmare on Elm Street, but just, take your pick of horror, crime, thriller. It hits all the detective getting framed. I could believe trying to wrap my head around, well, he dosed himself with electricity to get himself a tolerance of it. I'm like, that's not how electricity works.
And honestly, the one of the many problems with this is we get the kind of hallucinatory sequences, the flashbacks, the illusions, with Henriksen's character. But then when it comes time to the actual execution, I'm like, is this real? Because his body is transforming in that chair. He's hulking out and he's getting horribly burned. He rips out of the restraints and like lunges forward. Everyone's screaming and he's like standing there threatening Henriksen, who, to his credit, wields a folding chair more effectively than a gun. But I'm like, okay, at what point is he going to wake up? Like, oh no, shit, this is in the real world. No, this doesn't work at all.
What, the electric chair scene that was in the real world?
That's what I'm saying. But it plays like
that plays like a fantasy.
He turns into like a cartoon monster. I'm like, okay, this is the part where Henriksen wakes up again or something. I did like where he wakes up and he's like strangling his wife at one point. He's like freaking out, and then he wakes up again. He's strangling his wife because Janky like poses as his wife in the bed
with the wig and everything. Yeah. With the wig and everything.
I will give this movie credit. It at least steals from Videodrome, which is one of the more obscure references. But I also love the bit where they're doing it because Henriksen's pulling his stomach apart, but you can clearly see they set up these David Byrne like 7-foot long shoulder pads on either side to get the gag, and his scrawny hands are coming in from either side. It's like the most awkward thing ever.
Yeah, because there's the scene where early on, as Ian mentioned, in one of the dream sequences, the meat cleaver comes down on his chest, and then later on he finds out there's still some blood there, and in fact it comes up in his therapy session, which he has right after that, going, hey, what are you doing to yourself, when he's trying to convince the shrink, hey, let me back on the force. And then he's like, what's that blood on your chest? He's like, oh, that's nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah. Wasn't the therapist the detective from the Incredible Hulk TV show?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one plus in the column.
But yeah, later on it comes into effect that he's got the nightmare scene, and it's opening up again. And you could clearly tell Lance is in the closet because he goes up against this closet.
Hey,
door.
That was never proven. I'm sorry, go ahead. What?
He's in this closet door, and he's hanging. You can obviously tell he's half hanging out of the door, and there's this fake body that it's so evident. I'm like, wow, they couldn't even do prosthetics at all on just his regular chest. No, they.
This is like 6 years after Videodrome. Come on.
It is 6 years after Videodrome. Absolutely. So, it's such a mishmash watching this film. I'm just like, I could see hints of where the original House 3 script was. It looks like, the studios, I think, really did it a disservice trying to tailor it to be something new because, don't get me wrong. I love Byron James. I love him as a villain guy, as just, or occasionally the good guy, like in Fifth Element,
That's right. Yeah.
He's actually a good guy. But in this one, his character, there's really no rules. Kara, can you figure out any rules at all with this character? Because he appears to be in the real world, but also dream world, but not really. I couldn't figure it out.
I don't really get the switchback. Like, I get lost in the transition. Like, is it still a dream, or is this actually happening? And then that's kind of like who I was saying. It kind of teases with your head because you don't know what's what, and then I don't know.
Well, because and again, I go back to the other two House films because this was kind of intended to be the House, another one. And the other two, all the weird, freaky shit happened in the house. So even though you had a guy manifest himself, Richard Mull was the original Vietnam guy opposite William Catt in the original. And he did come into the real world in the house, though. In the second one, Cliffy finds the portal to the Amazon world where they're going to sacrifice a girl. Yes, I've watched those two films many times. Okay. But it's all within the house. None of the crazy stuff that happens is outside of the house. Yet here in this film, we've got Hank, Janky, and he's in the detective office. He breaks the table. He's showing up elsewhere. And you're like, how? But not always.
No, I want to know how. Okay, Henriksen is playing a McCarthy, right? He's a detective. He's been on the force for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He's in an interrogation room. An incredibly tall guy in a trench coat who looks exactly like Byron James except he doesn't have the mustache or whatever. He's like, "Oh, excuse me, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I need to ask you some questions."
He's his court-appointed attorney is what he was. Yeah, that's what
Okay,
he
that's
posed
what it
as.
was?
Yeah, he pointed as yeah.
But it
His
wasn't
court-
even, I did a better accent. It was like, "Hey, I'm your court-appointed attorney. I'm not an undead serial killer you might be expecting, governor." Yeah, it just none of it works. The only thing I liked from that scene was that I think it was Louis Arquette,
Mhm.
who was the father of Patricia and all
Yeah.
the Arquettes. David, he was one of the cops in the room.
Yeah.
It looked very young. I was
Yeah.
like, "Holy shit, is that Louis Arquette?" And then I tuned back out.
Yeah, and Cara, what'd you think of the professor's storyline? They add like this is going to be a major part of the film, and the guy's like non-existent for most of it.
Are we talking about the guy who was studying the electrical theory, or
Yeah.
he just came off as a quack? I did pretty much a throwaway character. I don't remember much about him other than what are you on?
He looked like a less healthy version of Jeffrey Combs from The Frighteners.
Yeah, well, no, he did look like Jeffrey Combs. He reminded me. I'm like, at first, I'm like, wait, is that Jeffrey? I'm like, no, that's not. That's great value, Jeffrey Combs. I'm like, that's he's trying to be like one of those characters, and you think the whole idea of the electricity and him studying, and you'd think he'd show up and help the detective, team up, but no, the professor guy like disappears forever until our detective goes over to Janky's house, which isn't crime taped. Nothing's been moved out of this apartment of the serial killer. Nothing. This apartment was not touched.
Well, that's how it works, Mark.
What kind of police officers are these?
Well, based on the interrogation scene, I think you got your answer.
They're students.
They're all graduates of the police academy.
The actual police academy with Steve Gutenberg. Yeah, he's the one that trained them all.
See, if Lance Henriksen, I know we're talking about not been in this movie, but instead it had been Steve Gutenberg playing Detective Mahoney years later, haunted by an undead serial killer, instant criterion for me.
Oh my God, that'd be brilliant. That would be brilliant.
His partner that dies is fucking Hightower.
Oh man, yeah. Which again, our meat cleaver guy works really, really fast because the partner in the flashback, we've got McCarthy and his partner, and they go investigating, and they're only separated for like not even 10 minutes, but in that time, Janky manages to chain up his partner and cut off his limbs. At some point, it was just that quick. Apparently,
without a bone saw.
Yeah, without a bone saw.
Well, he killed like 119 people with that thing, so he was really an expert.
I loved that body count too. It wasn't like 19 people or 20 people. No, he's credited with possibly killing over 119 people.
That's some Johnny Bartlett stuff.
That truly is. But again, that's just our two main characters, folks. We haven't even gotten to the family, which, McCarthy might have been better off without him. I know it sounds bad, but you had the wife who I understand he was going through some trauma and she was trying to understand. But she really thought he killed the kid really quick. I mean, they find the body of the girl's boyfriend down in the basement, and the cops immediately suspect him. And the wife is like, "Nah, he killed him." I'm like,
in his defense, the guy's shirt was off. Of course, he killed him.
Well, I kind of understand where she's coming from, because this was after he had repeatedly assaulted her in their bed in the middle of the night.
True.
And also after he In one of the
viciously-
best films in cinema history, honestly, he pulls out a gun and shoots the TV. And the mom's like running to put her body over the kids.
Well, she sees it coming ahead of time. Yeah, because there's a scene they're watching a family, they're watching a stand-up comic. And all of a sudden, McCarthy goes into his hallucinations, which you have in this film. And suddenly there's Janky on TV talking about killing people, like a TV show, though. It's Deathathon, I think it is, or Killathon, or whatever it is. And yeah, he brings out the gun, and they show the mom and the kids on the couch, and the mom sees it, and she's like, she doesn't stop him. She goes and covers the kid.
I'm not jumping in front of a gun that my hallucinating husband is wielding at the TV. But, I did like the one of the jokes, because he's going off like this vaudeville series of one-liners. The one that I wrote down, because I don't think I'd actually heard it before. A lot of these things are hacked, but this one was good. My wife likes to talk after sex. Last week, she called me from Las Vegas. Oh, so good. But I went like 3/4 of the way through the movie. I paused it and I went and I looked up the trailer on YouTube. And like, how did they market this movie? And it was awfully. But they were trying. What did they say? It said, if you thought Freddy was a howl, and at that point they cut to that stand-up comedy scene, because it was very much the jokey Freddy.
Right.
And if Jason was a scream, wait till you meet Max. And then you go, no, this is never going to work.
That's one of the worst parts of this movie, is that giggle. After a while, it's like, shut up, please.
Especially because they get the longer, the further into the movie we get, the more we get that laugh. It's like Freddy Krueger has an iconic cackle, but this thing, it just sounds like one of the weasels from Roger Rabbit.
It does. That's where it is. I was trying to recognize where it came from. That you're right. That's exactly where it is. We've got some comments we're going to pull over to the side for a moment and grab them all. Info Bomb is with us, Robert Baum. Ooh. And he goes, too bad James never quite had a franchise. He supposed 48 Hours is the only thing, though, that is hardly a franchise. Yeah, that's true. It kind of a franchise. They only did 2 of them, I think. So, and I admit in amazement in this being the only time B-movie regulars Henriksen and James Byron appear in the same film together. That's true. Not only do they appear in the same film, this is one of the only films, I think, and Cara, you can correct me if I'm wrong, where both of these gentlemen are leads, like the main guys in a film. I can't think of another film where either one of them were like the lead.
Not that I can think of, not without taking a guess and being wrong.
Well, come on, Mark. We've talked about a few films during the Henriksen experience where Lance has been front and center. Are you talking about like mainstream movies that people would have actually seen?
Kind of, but even still, he wasn't like. I mean, this one we stick with him pretty much throughout. It's either him or Byron James throughout the film, and the other ones we've talked about. Yeah, Lance is kind of the main character, but even in Savage Dawn, where he was supposed to be the badass, he's not top billing, and we don't always stick with him. We go all over with some other characters.
That's true. I'm seeing where you're coming from now, and I think you're right. Although further down, Mr. Baum's going to school us both. But
yes, he is. I'm sure he is, because the man knows so much. He's a warehouse of useful knowledge in the film world. And then he mentioned might be overdosing on electricity be akin to Wesley building up a tolerance for poison in Princess Bride. You can build up a tolerance maybe for poison, depending on the poison, but electricity, no. That's not how the physics, I think, work.
I'm gonna let the train run over my foot. Next, I'll let the train run over my leg. I'm gonna work my way up to my arms.
No, you start off with the grocery cart running over your foot, and then you start with a bicycle running over your foot, then you start with a scooter running over your foot.
You're moving way too slow, Mark. I'm going.
I'm still hanging on to when does the ATV show up?
That's true. That's true. You know, building up that way. Yeah. So that's the way the electricity that I couldn't believe when he had his own electric chair in his room. I'm like, what? I'm like,
and you know,
He's
and where do
not
you
chewing
get
on a
those?
lemon wedge while he's doing that, is he?
no, I don't think so. No, I don't think he's chewing on a lemon wedge. I'm just trying to picture good old meat cleaver Max sitting in his chair at nights going, okay, I'm only going to give myself 8 volts tonight. All right. Now 10. Whew, what a workout. You know, a week later, it's like, I'm going for the whole 120. You know,
Oh gosh.
that's why he
Yikes.
didn't have so much hair above him, I guess, because that all burned off as he was testing himself with his homemade electric chair, which wasn't in evidence. I'm sorry. This is the guy has gone through trial. He's on death row, goes to death row fairly quickly in the movie world because that's what happens. Guys don't sit on death row for like 20 years. They immediately go to the chair. And his whole apartment hasn't been touched by any cops.
Well, also they would have shaved his head before they put him in the chair.
Yeah, they
I'm
would
pretty
have.
sure of that.
But-
But he still has that weird, oh, it was a ponytail or whatever was going on back there.
Yeah. Well, you got to have something to catch fire, right?
Desert in the front, party in the back.
Woo! Now we're talking. Infobomb also says stealing from Videodrome. Wow, I need to see the horror show more awake this time. I think I rented it one night in college and dozed off while watching it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll agree with that one.
I could see that. Yeah. I didn't even know this film existed. I was like, what? House 3? What? And then I was like, I knew they made a House 4, but I always thought they jumped from House 1 and 2 to House 4 being a joke because the series has always had kind of a tongue-in-cheek type of approach. Even though the first one is the most scary and more horror-driven, it's still been comic horror for the House series. So I always thought they just skipped 3 and went to 4.
Well, that was one of the original concepts for Fletch Lives.
Right.
Chevy Chase wanted to call it Fletch 3 just to confuse the hell out of people.
And then he asked which actor was from the Hulk film. That was the detective, I believe.
It was not. I was just looking. I was looking up on my phone because I saw that question coming. I want to be ready. I was wrong. It's just they look alike. The guy from the Hulk was named Jack Colvin.
Oh, okay.
And then the other guy was Matt something. Yeah.
And this is the second film with Arquette and Byron James in it. They were both in Tango and Cash, which I do recognize and remember. Indeed. And yeah, also Robert Zadar was in Tango and Cash. And Petty is here with us. Hey, Petty.
Hey, Petty.
Greetings. Stop by to say hello. Great review, although the quality of the film doesn't help much to do the review.
I disagree. I think that the low quality of the film is making it a much more fun discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly deep, especially considering how much they borrow from, including the furnace. They talk about Nightmare on Elm Street, and literally they're stealing furnace scenes from it.
And randomly, I liked where the woman was looking for the cat in the beginning of the movie, and she runs into that furnace, and she's like, "Kitty, Kitty," and then the furnace does something. She's like, "Kitty."
Yeah.
I'm like, what did you accuse the cat of doing?
I don't know.
Well, I also like that there's a literal jump scare involving a cat jumping out of a closet. That's the kind of movie we're dealing with here.
They threw the cat out, didn't they?
And the cat doesn't really show up until the end again when they find this box as the family's moving. They come to the happy resolution, and you're right, Infobomb. I've been saying, Byron, it's Brian James. Brian, after he's been dispatched because he's brought into the real world, and then he unloaded the gun, our guy McCarthy unloads his gun on the guy. Now that he's brought into the real world, kind of a la Freddy, grab him and wake up. They find
I wish someone had done that to me.
They find the cat in a box from the basement. I'm like, where I had a cat. Okay, he was an a-hole. May he rest in peace. But we loved him. But I'm like, there's no way that cat would have just stayed in the box in the basement that entire time. Because you wonder where the cat's been. This whole film takes place over a number of days, and nobody seems to worry about where the cat is.
If my husband is shooting the TV if my daughter's boyfriend shows up dead in the basement, yeah, the cat's gonna be like number 60 on the list, Mark.
Yeah, but the cat should be chewing on the kid down in the basement. He was down there that long.
Maybe the cat got
would've
lost in
been
the
cool.
really weird, like, lit closet, like the whole rack of clothes that's just like down there by the washing machine I don't know what's going on with this basement, but it's very strange.
I don't know either. There's a cabinet with a double doors with an alarm in it of some sort, some alarm hat. There next to that is the rack of clothing. And then there's the furnace, but the furnace is like in the middle of the basement. And yet in a corner, yet not. I don't know. The other house films, the layout of the house made sense. You could tell where things were. I had no clue where anything was.
Well, you should have, Mark. We spend so much time going down to the basement. You should have a firm sense of the layout.
We do go down to the basement a lot. Yes, we do. And yes, Infobomb does school us. Henriksen was the lead in Piranha 2. You are absolutely right. And I don't think Michael Jeter had his head shaved in Green Mile. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a movie trope they either forget. Just like in real life, they don't not hood the person when they electrocute them. As far as
Right.
I'm aware. And in this one, good old Brian, our meat cleaver Max, he's out there for the world. He's not even behind glass. I mean, he's not in his own room or anything. He's just out there with the people to get fried. That close. I'm like, what kind of jail cell is this? What kind of jail is this even?
I don't know. I just noticed like
It's the
doctor
Walmart
guy-
of jails.
They can't afford a full execution chamber, so we just hook up the electric chair that also doubles as the cafeteria, I guess.
Well, also like the doctor that they get comes in, and maybe it's just an 80s thing, but he's like wearing white sneakers. I'm like, come on, just get some professional shoes. You're not Doc Hollywood or some nonsense.
and Brian James, God bless him, but I'm like, dude, I'm laughing. He's getting electrocuted, and I'm just laughing because his eyes are crossing. He's like, and man, if I was in the, I'd just be laughing. I just, he plays it up so almost not straight. I
empathize with him because his eyes were rolled so back far in his head, and I was like, I'm there with you, brother.
Info Bob also said Matt Clark had like Cloven guested on Rat Patrol. So yeah, I mean,
what Rat Patrol is that
Rat
a TV
Patrol
show?
was a show, I believe, long time ago. Not a long time ago. Well, a long time ago, relatively. But it was a series, I believe.
There's a Disney, A Wonderful World of Disney original film from 1986 called The Brat Patrol.
No, not
starring
that,
Sean
no.
Astin. I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
No, we're talking the TV series from '66.
Oh,
that
was off by 20 years.
There was the Brat Patrol as well. Was actually from Magical World of Disney in 1954 and 83.
Wait, the 80s one was a remake?
Well, it was based. I think it was based off of the show from '54.
Is it about military brats?
I don't know.
Why not, Mark?
I don't know these things. But
I like that all quick. Why not?
Why not? Kurt, do you see at all any hint of where Meat Cleaver Max could become the next horror icon? I mean, we're talking 89, so we talked about this last week. I know, unfortunately, you missed out on the Pumpkinhead, but we were talking about how they were trying to find the next horror icons. Is there anything about Meat Cleaver Max that would make him be the next horror icon into the 90s?
I don't see anything. That he's not interesting enough. He doesn't really have any neat abilities. A meat cleaver, he may as well have had a frying pan.
Could have been Frying Pan Frank. That would have been amazing.
Frying Pan Frank. Now there's a memorable killer.
Yeah.
The Meat Cleaver Max, that's like, okay, Meat Cleaver, that's Okay. But frying pan, that's a whole different level, because that's like smashing and pulverizing. That's not just chopping, because
Can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Well, I think that's a
Has to be
Freddy line.
cast iron.
Yeah,
cast
there you
iron.
go.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would have to be cast iron.
Cast iron Casey.
And the frying pan kid. No, anyway.
Ooh.
Cast iron Casey.
It could be more like an angry housewife or something. Rigid Rita.
Ooh,
Rigid Rita.
Rigid Rita. Wow, you could draw any number of images from that one.
Well, you can, Mark. I'm going to move on gratefully.
Okay, sure, right, yeah. I'm the only one. Okay, sure. I like that. Richard.
Well, it's mostly because my mom's name is Rita, and I don't want to think about that.
Okay, well then, fair enough. And Infobomb said Rat Patrol starred Christopher George of Enter the Ninja and Grizzly, and Eric Brandon when he was Hans Budagast. So always got to love when actors change their names. Speaking of changing their names, we've got two actors that we didn't talk about yet, two characters. The kids in quotes. The daughter, Kara. What do you think of the daughter who is supposedly 17 going on 26?
I'd say she's at least convincing at being youthful, but
still carry that 80s trend of casting 20-somethings as teenagers and not looking like teenagers.
Well, I think part of that is to help when they have the inevitable shower scene,
Yeah, which, it's funny because she was in here and it was like, I had to pause the movie. I'm like, okay, how old is she actually? Because I'm like, there's no way she's almost 18. And then I looked at when she was born. I'm like, oh, she's like 25. Okay, that's for one. And then I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, because that's Dee Dee Pfeiffer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like sitting there, okay, maybe we will get away with not having a shower scene. Nope, wait, there's the shower scene. literally, I'm watching a movie going, wow, it's an 80s movie with a teen female in it, and we actually haven't had any exploitation scenes so far. I'm like, oh wow, and literally on cue, it was like, oh no, there it is. Okay.
Well, it's very tame for an 80s exploitation horror nude scene. I wonder. I would think that it's probably kind of like what they did with Freddy versus Jason with Catherine Isabel in the shower, because that was not her; it was a body double.
Right.
That was shot from above, and then they did the close-ups on her face when she's pulling the shower curtain over. They did the same thing here, so that's why I'm wondering if it was a double as well. Because it's one of those scenes where, and I don't want to get all like horny old man, but it's like, if you're not going to commit to it and really then why even have that in there?
No, I get what you're saying, because I suspect it was a body double, because it is shot down from the back. You do get brief glimpses, but then every shot of her afterwards is above shoulders and above.
Yeah.
So the way it's shot in that, you're like, okay, they may have used a body double, most likely. Which, whatever. It's just one of those things where I was like, it was almost escaping that trope. And no, there it was.
Well, it's almost like they needed to make the runtimes, because you could have just had a scene where she's coming out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel or something. Oh, she just got out of the shower. But no, we've got to show the shower scene, but not really show the shower scene. It's not like we're making Psycho here, where it's all artsy and shit.
Well, and then we come to because this middle part, it slows down a little bit, and then we get to the final act where he's confronting. Our detective has escaped fairly easily. Okay, this guy's in custody for supposed murder, and after he knocks out his buddy of many years, he manages his way out of the office fairly quickly, apparently, because he hops in his car and drives home, because old meat cleaver Max is going to go after his family, and he shows up and his kid appears to be dead, his son in quotes. And then his daughter, at least they didn't show this. Okay, it's the implied assault from Meat Cleaver Max that he raped the daughter, the way they play it, because that's where he freaks out about the whole, and then you get this weird pregnancy thing. I have no idea what's going on with this finale, but it's just like, what?
Well, it's, you know, it's a gag so you can see Brian's face
In her
coming
belly,
through the
yeah,
belly, but it just immediately reminded me of Nightmare on Elm Street: Freddy's Revenge, where
right.
Freddy's coming through Jesse's stomach. I'm at least glad that they didn't go the route of Alien versus Predator Requiem, which to this day is one of the most tasteless things I've seen in a horror movie. And this is me talking, where you've got the maternity ward with all the pregnant mothers, and they all simultaneously give birth to predator alien hybrids, and you see everything. I'm like, this is disgusting. What they did in this movie, I almost said shocker, but that's a totally different film, quote unquote.
Not really.
Right. It's tame. It's tame.
I mean, how many movies have we had where the killer gets killed, but he comes back as a ghost? And wasn't that not Ghost in the Machine, but or was that Ghost in the Machine? There's so many of these in the late 80s. What was with this trend? Do you wonder why were they going this route? Because it really became evident, and rinse, wash, repeat.
I mean, supernatural elements seem to have been a big thing. Like, you still had the Freddy Krueger and all this other stuff. Like, what in the world is he?
Right.
I was looking through. What is it? Supposedly, what was it? Destroyer and Prison were named as similar themes along the lines of this one as well.
Yeah. There's been a lot of them in during this time. I remember watching. We mentioned Shocker. There was that one.
It confuses me because this movie is older, but it feels like a ripoff of Shocker, because Shocker's not that great, but it's not that horrible.
No, it isn't, and I mean, it's one of the lesser films, but still, it's more entertaining than this one, because at least that one I think had at least some rules. I mean, if you're gonna do a film like this, and we mentioned it earlier, give us some kind of rules. Prison, Destroyer, and Shocker came out the same year. Were all similar themed, and I know it wasn't exactly the most original concept, but later on there were even more films about a villain possessing whatever, haunting a house or possessing things, and it's like, come on.
I'm not big on serial killer archives, but it makes me curious. Like, was there somebody that had been executed in the late 80s? Maybe that was the reason for this recurring theme.
Well, they were the focus. I mean, killers were the focus for a lot. I mean, you did have a number of serial killers in the 80s. You had Richard Ramirez, you had Doug and Clark Bundy, you had of course Dahmer, who
Dahmer was the 90s.
Well, he was discovered, and I mean, they realized later on, I mean, but he had been, so I mean, serial killers were kind of coming into focus. I think that was kind of the next evolution for where horror films wanted to go, because like you said, Cara, the supernatural was done by itself. I mean, Freddy, zombie Jason, eventually Michael Myers, the killer who can't die, so to speak. So now we go into the late 80s, where you've got Chucky. You had the serial killer who possessed the body of a doll. You get Meat Cleaver Max possessing a house.
I can't hear that without thinking Mighty Max and totally different thing.
Mighty Max Cleaver. I remember that Cleaver episode he had. They banned that from TV. Infobomb did mention that Ted Bundy had been on death row before he got the chair in 89, he believes. So yeah, I mean,
that might have been it then.
That's probably what kind of influenced this, knowing that was coming up, because he mentions Craven was a better filmmaker and well, in my opinion, than the hack who did Horror Show.
Well, that's another thing that makes me curious, because what was it? Cunningham began his career with Wes Craven.
Right.
Cunningham did Horror Show, Craven did Shocker, but it makes me curious, like, who ripped off who, because there's so many similarities between the two films. Plus, why would you do that?
Yeah. Well, and then, it makes you wonder what the original script of the Horror Show looked like before they tailored it to try to make a new icon. Because it goes along with our pumpkin discussion last week. There were so many later horror films where they were trying to, create the new icon. Even Shocker, you could tell they were trying to set up as like the new horror franchise icon, and none of those really took off, except for maybe, you could say Chucky is the only one who, but he went to the comedy route to survive, really, the more campy comedy route.
Sequelitis.
Sequelitis. I mean, when you got a horror show, when at one point one of their promo props is a lay branded condom, okay, you're no longer scary, right? Was it Bride of Chucky had the condom, or Child? I forgot which one was they had that, but it was making the rounds. I remember that. But yeah, this is just a weird film. Aaron Eisenberg plays the son in this, and he was now he's supposed to play the youngest son in here, and he was like 18 or 19, but he was supposed to be younger than.
He's like supposed to be 12 or something like that. Jesus.
Well, I think he's a shorter.
What'd they do? Kick him every time he had to say lines?
I'm not sure.
His gimmick was kind of cute, where his thing was he would write to different products and say, "Hey, I found rat droppings in your cereal," and they would send him like a lifetime supply, whatever. At the end, it was chili. But let's talk about. I don't know what's up with this movie. It starts off with these, the opening credit sequence is these really loving kind of family barbecue. It's a really idyllic kind of family situation. And at the end, the daughter goes into the house to get something. She has to go into the basement. Fortunately, we don't follow her down there for once in this movie's, runtime. But she comes back out, and I'm expecting like, oh, she didn't come up from the basement, or she brought something dangerous up of the box. No, it was just the cat. And then they all stop and take a family photo, and it ends on this nice kind of hopeful moment. Like, this is not an 80s horror movie. What is this shit?
I think the writer procrastinated 2 or 3 days before they had to turn this in, and they just wrote it hungover.
I think you might be onto something.
I think it's just a chop shop job that they did, trying to make this something other than trying to restart it versus making another house film. And I think that's where it's part of it, because the tone is all over the place. You at one point, you've got the kid part, which Eisenberg, I was aware of that, Robert, that he did have a kidney problem which stunted his growth, so he was 18 in this, but was able to play the kid role of 12.
Okay, I pause there, Mark. Robert, how the hell do you know all this stuff?
He's
just
really
seem to know just about everything about the movies we talk about. It's amazing.
I didn't even know that. Now I sound really mean over that kicking joke earlier.
Yeah. But no, but I mean, at least, it got him the roles, and it got him a role in this, but he did again seem older than what he should have been. But where the tone is all over the place is like you said, yeah, it opens with this family. Okay. It doesn't even open with like foreboding family music. It's like actually touching family music and family video audio. And you're like, okay, and photos. And then we cut to him, hallucinating into the furnace after he makes his rounds checking on his family. And he thinks back to the time when he busted the meat cleaver Max, he was hungry because he had all kinds of things cooking in his kitchen. He had a head in the fryer. He had a hand in the fryer. He was big on fried foods. Max should fry
I like
his body
the
parts.
severed head on the plate with blue plate special drawn in blood because it was the head of a cop. That was really nice.
Yeah.
And did you catch this? I don't know if this is I'm going to call it a flub because this movie is so sloppy. If you were to ask the director or Alan Smithy if it was intentional, they'd probably say, but of course, because that's the kind of artists we are. At the end, when the scientist guy shows up with the severed head on the plate, just out of the shot, you can see the top of the blue plate special in blood.
Yeah.
That was dripping. So they just like, hey, we got this shot. Get Jim in here. Put his head down there. We're gonna have this for later in the movie.
They literally did it both shots, but they didn't clear out the blue plate special part, which I don't know if they were trying to do that on purpose or like you said, I think it was just the same shot. And if it was intended to be in the shot, you could have read it. So I think you're right. This will be great. We'll put him in there, the professor this time, and just we won't redress the set at all.
See, here's how this whole professor, doctor, scientist, whatever character works. Earlier on, I thought I was watching a much smarter movie than I was because they keep setting it up that Janky can make people see things that aren't there. So basically cause these rifts in reality to manipulate people. You've got this really shifty, unhealthy looking scientist guy who keeps talking to Henriksen's character about you've got to get him to this house. You've got to draw him in. You've got to electrocute him. That's the only way you're going to get rid of him. I thought that they were going to have it be a plant to where that scientist guy was actually a manifestation created by Janky to lure him back to the house so he could get electrocuted because that would be what makes him stronger or helps him fulfill this transformation or something, like be this, use him in this whole thing.
Really giving it a lot of credit.
That hope died down about 5 minutes after I had that thought because something really stupid popped in the screen. I'm like, oh, that's that kind of movie.
Either that or some double cross where he gets electrocuted and then he just becomes super stanky.
That would have been the sequel had this movie gone anywhere. I'm convinced.
Super stanky. Yeah. Stanky janky. There we go.
That's why he killed 119 people.
He killed 100. They kept
calling it a trauma film.
That's a trauma film right there. Robert Bob mentioned this film makes Leviathan. He was talking about Deep Star 6. He's like, Tom Bray was later in Sean Cunningham's waterlogged horror film Deep Star 6. Don't bother watching it unless you really want to waste your time. Makes Leviathan look like a great film. Yeah, that was, again, one of those things where they were doing a lot of trends, and there was the water horror for a while, Deep Star 6.
I liked their gimmick, though. It's, what was it? We're always looking at the sky to see what's beyond, but nobody ever looks below in the water.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great tagline. Absolutely. And Henriksen, wasn't he the lead in Aliens versus Predator? No, he wasn't really the lead. It was I forgot.
He was it was Sanaa Lathan.
Yeah,
Henriksen was the protagonist in that movie. He was the inciting, or I guess the catalyst.
Yeah,
but he was not the main character.
And neither were anybody else. Even the title characters weren't really the main characters in that film. That film.
Mark, I will not have you disparage Alien versus Predator. Alien versus Predator Requiem is totally fair game. But AVP is not that bad. Had it been an R-rated movie, I'm convinced people would give it a lot more of a shot.
Had it followed anything from the source material, it would have been better.
Well, no, that's not true. Had it been an adaptation of the comics, it would have been a completely different thing. But that's not the source material. The comics came out first, but it's not necessarily based on that.
Okay.
Just saying.
They
My gripe,
implied
it was an unfair fight. There was human interference.
That's true.
That's true. That's very true. That's another debate for another time. You enjoy what you enjoy.
No, Mark, a debate is when there's two sides fighting against each other. Sorry. What?
Oh, that's not the first time I've been told I'm wrong on this show.
Certainly not by me.
Speaking of Silence of the Lambs, the girl in the pit in the film was inspired by the savagery of the serial killer named Gary Heidnik. And yeah, I mean, horror films have always taken inspirations from real life things. More so later on, took from the killers.
Leatherface.
Leatherface, yeah. You know, that's Ed Gein. Woo, Wisconsin represent.
You must be so proud.
I am. I'm very
also
proud.
Buffalo Bill.
And Buffalo Bill, yeah. There was also that worked in as well. So, and this one, I don't know. Some people say that this was one of Henriksen's better performances. I liked him better in Pumpkinhead.
This wasn't so much a performance as a series of acting exercises. I mean, like the scene where, like, later in the film, where he's just like going through the house and kicking stuff and knocking things over and swearing. I swear to God, you could just have tagged that as him reenacting that footage from the Johnny Depp trial where he's in his kitchen, and I would have totally believed it. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was, but I don't know. He's got a lot of expressions on his face that happen in this film throughout.
That's true. He does smile quite a bit when he's with his family. He's kind of relaxed. That's nice.
He does, smile and get the angry face and everything. But I liked him better in Pumpkinhead. I'll say I even liked him better in Savage Dawn than I liked him in this film. And it may be the direction or the writing. I don't know. Cara, what do you think of Lance's performance in this film?
I think he was probably one of the more seasoned ones out of everybody in this entire thing, which is unfair because I don't think even he could have carried this turkey across the street.
Speaking of turkey, we didn't talk about the turkey.
Oh, yes, the turkey scene. Yes. Tell us, Ian, about the turkey.
They're sitting down to dinner, and he hallucinates that the turkey that they're about to carve up comes to life, and it gets Max Jenke's face on it. We've been talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. I think this was like something I would have seen in Elm Street 4. I thought the effect, although it was kind of goofy, was pretty well done, and it's really disturbing because it's like half Jenke face and half turkey, but the Jenke face is coming out of like the side profile of the turkey's head, so the beak is sort of coming out of the top of his head or his ear.
Yeah,
like it's not creepy, it's goofy looking, but it's at least inventive. But then he has to do that.
Well, that's after you get the image of his family dead, which he, and then our cop guy keeps it together. No, he doesn't. He takes a knife and he literally murders the already cooked turkey with this huge butcher knife, scaring the family like wholeheartely. Like they're just like, "What the hell, Dad?"
Yeah.
And I would have just said, "Oh, I thought I saw it moved." No, but play a joke or something. But
I'm surprised he didn't take out his gun and threaten to shoot it.
I was expecting it. I was fully, because this was after he shot the TV. I was fully expecting him to shoot the turkey. I fully expected him to take the gun out and shoot the turkey.
I want to see a remake of this movie from the family's point of view. Just watching, like, take out all the illusions. Just watch Lance Henriksen walking around, pulling out his gun.
And knife, and a couple more comments here. We've got Petty who says, today Ian is very sharp. Everyone be careful. Ian is always sharp. It just depends on how much we want to sheathe him. No, wait, that came out wrong.
You're talking about chucking condoms. I don't know where this is going.
And Robert Bob says Henriksen can make anything worthwhile, even though in an interview in Premiere he said he hated all the work he did prior to Aliens.
Wow.
Wow. Well, I do know too that he didn't quite care for Pumpkinhead either. He thought it was, I think, too goofy, if I remember correctly. Am I right, Kara?
I don't know his sentiments on the film. I really like Pumpkinhead, so
Oh, I think he thought it was a little too goofy. I forgot the exact interview with it, but still, I like him
I,
in that. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say I think the only goofy part of it was where the guy in costume forgot to take off his sneakers, and you can see.
I missed that.
I did. I missed that too. Now I almost want to go back and watch. Pumpkinhead wasn't bad. We talked about last week that it was more entertaining than we thought it would. It just not quite there for me, but it was still more interesting by far than this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the first time I've seen it a handful of times, and this is the first time that watching it for the show that I actually kind of liked it. So yeah, it just took a while.
It grows on you, but this one, I don't think there's too many similarities to other films before it, and when it came out that same year, that film doesn't do it quite as good. You could tell it got chopped up. You could tell why it went through two different directors. One director got fired just before production, I believe, and so that's why they got the other guy who did one of my favorite Jason films. So I don't understand it. It's got to be the script. He did Jason X.
Wow, it was that
James Isaac. Yes, he did Jason X, and he did the special effects on Existence. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he also directed. He only did like 4 films. He did Jason X, The Horror Show, Skinwalkers, and Pig Hunt. But I love Jason X. Jason X is great. So it's got to be the script, because he directs that very well. This one, not so much, and he hadn't directed too much. So it's like, it's got to be the script with this film. It's just one of those, the studio should have left it alone. It probably would have done better, at least in a cult or horror circles. But, I don't know. Kara, can you recommend this film at all?
No.
Yeah.
Unless you hate yourself. Watch it.
Wow, that's a tagline right there. If you hate yourself, watch this movie. Woo, I like it. Nice.
Horror Show, the last movie you'll ever see.
The reason why it's called The Horror Show, it's horrific. It's horrifically written.
There's no amount of substance you can take beforehand that will make this movie tolerable.
Yeah,
that should be in the ratings box.
That's the ratings box. Instead of a letter rating, it's what substances you should take before seeing the film.
All of
with
them.
milligrams written right next to them.
Or grams, depending. We are talking the 80s here. Ian, what about you? Can you recommend this one at all?
Yes, but only as a curiosity. I mean, it's not that exciting. It's just fascinating to see, 88, 89. This was like kind of the peak of horror movies. There's like a million of them, and not all of them were worthwhile. And sometimes people tried to capitalize on the success of like the franchises, like the big boys, like we've talked about, Freddy, Jason, Pinhead, Leatherface, Michael Myers, and when they fail spectacularly, and that's the case here with Max Jenke. I mean, Horace Pinker is a goofy name, but it's at least cooler than Max Jenke. And Horace Pinker was the killer in Shocker, played by Mitch Pileggi, who would go on to be great in the X-Files.
I love Mitch.
Unfortunately, this movie's just a slide down a chocolate slope.
Pretty much, yeah. With like the peanuts along the way to cut you up on the way down the drain.
I'm usually the guy who could find bright spots in most films, and in this one, I have to agree, out of curiosity. And if you want to watch all the quote unquote house films, you could watch it as part of the series. House 4 was better than this one, and the other 2 films were definitely
singing pizza.
Yeah. That already makes it better than this film. This film doesn't have a singing pizza.
Here's a question, because I have not seen House 4, and I haven't. I guess I've seen House 3, but to me, there's no one from this movie who is from Cheers. You got John Ratzenberger and
was in the second one, and George Wendt was in the first one. Yeah.
right. So unless you've got like a Kelsey Grammer cameo somewhere, or fucking even I'd settle for Lilith, you know, I don't believe this has any. No, there's no need to put a house label on this.
No, it's makes me really wish I could see the original script, what it was involved, because, you know, you can kind of see glimpses of it that maybe they were playing at. The detective moved into this house and he starts seeing the ghost images of Janky, but it stays within the house. That would follow with at least the same rules as the other two House films, in that in the first one, William Katz's character sees his buddy from Vietnam, you know, but it's within the house. The guy never like leaves the house or hallucinates outside of the house. You know, and there's demons in that. And in this one, it's missing that. It's kind of, you know, and I'm wondering if that part's got cut out. You know, maybe we had a dead cat part at one point.
Well, the other two House movies, you at least it was all inside the house, but by going into any room, you could wind up in the Old West or in the jungles of Nam or whatever. This one, at the very
and that's
end,
what made it fun.
right?
Yeah.
At the very end, we go to that boiler room and then the power plant or whatever. But the rest of it, like I said, we go. I could forgive the whole basement trope, like going down there 10 times, if every time you went down the stairs, you wound up in somewhere
other else. Yeah.
So
maybe they should have climbed into the furnace.
I
certainly
wanted to by the end of this movie.
And on that note, we will definitely end it. Thank you to all our fine live viewers. Appreciate every one of you tuning in. Infobomb always dropping the info bombs, and Petty showing up as well. Always glad to have you here. We've got some great stuff lined up. Just want to give a shout out to Jameson Frey. I hope I pronounced the last name right. Left a comment, a very interesting comment about Pumpkinhead, very extensive. And thank you for tuning into the podcast. Hopefully you tune in again, but we appreciate the comments always. That's why we have them here, to get that other opinions besides our own. Thank you, Ian and Kara, for being here. License to Shill is now yours. The floor is yours. Kara, by all means, please shill away.
I still don't have anything new I'm working on, but as always, I always have tons of reviews up on my YouTube channel, Horror Retrospective. If you're into 80s or 90s stuff, some classic horror, some obscure horror, that you can definitely find something there if you have an open mind.
Yeah, you can. I love the videos. Always interesting stuff, what pops up there and what you can find. And especially me being a fan of retro media and horror, especially. Some great stuff there. And Ian, go ahead. No,
I was going to say, and I also did do the entire House series, so I tortured myself going through all four.
You went through all four. You can stop at 2, but you can do all 4 if you're a completionist.
I didn't know any better.
That's right. I do remember that. Yeah, I remember watching those. The first 2 are fun. You know, it was one of those things where I watched those 2 quite often. The first 2, they were so different, yet in the spirit of the same way. You know, they had some fun cameos and such, and this film took the fun out of the entire series.
It's a punch in the gut.
It is. It really is. If you watched all of these movies together, you'd be like, what the hell happened? You know, there's a budget here, kind of.
Just skip this one and go straight to 4, and the flow's more concise.
They do. They flow a lot better. This one is just like a speed bump to them. And Ian, sir, go ahead, sir. License to Shill.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which you can find at Kicking the Seat on YouTube. This week, I'm actually back. I'm had a bit of a lull last week, but I've got 3 shows coming out. One dropped today. It was a retrospective on the movie Minority Report with film critic Armand White. Yes, that Armand White. And strangely enough, Minority Report, have you seen that film, gang?
Oh yeah.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
In the opening scene, there's the couple, the family that is sort of the people. The guy is gonna kill his wife, and that's what activates the pre-crime team. The husband, is Ari Gross, who was the star of House 2, the second story.
Oh, there you go. Hey, look at that.
Yeah, and then tomorrow I'm coming out with a show with Pat McDonald on a 1970 film with Robert Redford called Little Faust and Big Halsey.
Oh wow.
Yeah. You've heard of it? I'd never heard of this movie
I've heard of
before.
it. I haven't watched it. I've heard of it. You catch it mentioned occasionally. Yeah. Interesting.
It's a trip. And then sometime later in the week, I'm coming out with a double feature of Son of Hammerland, talking about the plague of the zombies and the reptile with Aaron Christensen.
Ooh,
that's all my showing.
Nice. And yeah, folks, if you are interested, check out our Patreon this week. I had one of Earth's mightiest critics from Ian's show on, Mr. Johnson. Will, he was on my show, and we talked the Crimes of the Future, the new one, 2022 one. That's
his favorite film of the year, right?
It's his favorite film of the year so far, which we talked about. It was close. It was really, I dug it. It's my jam, that type of movie. So but yeah, you can check that out on our Patreon this week. And yeah, I got reviews coming and all kinds of fun stuff. And we're gonna announce that Ian took a stab last week, and he stabbed Black Roses for next month's Horror of 1988. So I came up with this series called Killer Concert, with a K for concert. And the schedule is up on Special Mark Productions, as well as our pages of what movies we will be covering next month, including Rock and Roll Nightmare, Hard Rock Zombies, of course, Black Roses, and Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat will be next week, is where we're going to be kicking off our Killer Concert month. So stay tuned for that. It'll be a rockin' good time as we take a look at some of that Satan music that inspired so many horror movies. So it should be fun. So thank you so much, folks. Please check out my guest stuff. And if you're bored, check out our stuff too on specialmarkproductions.com. And now I would just say a good night, everyone. Don't.